Hello, it's Lombardi Live, and this is a very special Lombardi Live for me. As I often say, one of my dearest friends is here. He often gets introduced by saying he's well known for playing with Missing Persons and Frank Zappa, but his discography is huge. You've got to check it out. And speaking of missing persons, I want to find out where he's been for the last 2 years. Terry Bozzio.
Oh, Don.
Thanks for joining us and welcome back.
Thank you so much. I love you, and I'm really happy to be back. I got stuck in Japan. You know, my wife is Japanese, and we go to Japan usually in the winter for a few months when I'm not touring or doing something else. And the COVID thing happened, and we were stuck there for 2 years. It took us a while to get the vaccine. So I got that, was finished in August, and been trying to schedule getting back, you know, and how safe is it to fly and all these kinds of things. Because I'm an old man now. I turned 70. I guess in a few weeks I'll be 71.
Whoa. I understand the feeling.
Oh, yeah.
But, and Terry is quarantined as he just landed recently. We grabbed him right off the plane and said, we got to let people, I get tired of people saying, where is Terry? So now I said, as soon as you land, we're going to come out here and let people know what's going on. Yeah. And future things we have planned that are going to be really fun too. Want to get into something that I've been asked a lot about with some of the young drummers that are coming on to Drum Channel and seeing your course, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes too. Reshooting a whole bunch of that too. It's going to be quite a project for us coming up next year. Ostinatos. Explain to maybe young drummers looking at what an ostinato is, and I know the story, but why you got into that and what happened when you were in your practice room that day and people were walking by. It's fascinating.
Well, that was a funny thing. I was teaching a kid, and or waiting between teaching two kids, and I was just fooling around. There was only a cymbal and a floor tom in there. And I started to play the last two beats of a triplet, you know, da 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 da, and just started to go through the different permutations of you know, single, double, and triple, you know, phrased or notes, triplet variations on the cymbal against the ostinato. So what happened was somebody said, I came out to go to the bathroom or take a break or see where the student was, and they said, oh, I thought there was two drummers in there, you know. No, just me, you know. And this is how you do it. It's either a right, a left, or a together, you know. So you can make up these little sing-songs, and I think there's only about 9 different permutations of triplet notes. So
and you go through that in detail in your course.
Yeah.
So somebody just saying, was there two drummers there, had the light turn on to you that
yeah. Ooh,
I'm onto something here.
Yeah, that could be impressive, you know. So I started to fool around with things like that, and an ostinato is just a repeated musical phrase. So, you know, if you're playing a ride cymbal beat and doing kick and snare patterns against that, that's an ostinato. So, like I say, it's nothing that isn't, you know, it's not new. It's been around for 400 years or so in classical music and what have you. So I just kind of made a meal of that, and it developed into how musical can I get? You know, here's an ostinato, go through the permutations to get the independence to play whatever you want on top of it, and then how can I make it as melodic as possible, you know, and really make a musical statement. So there's an accompaniment and a lead melody line.
You made a lot more than a meal out of it. This was a huge extravaganza.
Well, you know, for me it was very funny because I started to teach, you know, to do this during drum clinics, and I felt that, you know, if I teach everybody this, and it's so easy, you know, if you understand the concepts, you know, that everybody will be doing this in you know, next year, and nobody did it. So, you know, it's kind of, well, what can I do next? You know, I guess, you know, I'm happy that nobody followed me in terms of helping me to be a unique drummer or something, but
no, I think you kept setting the bar further and further. Although the beginning one sounded like it was fairly simple as you're explaining it, but as you kept doing it and evolving, it became more like, look at what Terry's doing. This and it as people look back in history, they're going to look at what you've done and the mark that you've made.
I learned from all the guys who did that, you know, like Elvin Jones, Tony Williams, Billy Cobham, Jack DeJohnette. They all did stuff that I just went, oh my God, you know, this is different and this is cool. Jack DeJohnette had that kind of four-way coordination where each limb was kind of doing something different and changing all the time, and he was improvising. Then, you know, Billy, I still think there's nobody who has raised the bar higher than Billy. I mean, I've seen him play on a, you know, like a four-piece kit and just kill it. And he can swing, and his pocket is so deep, and he can read his odd time things, his Latin things, and his chops are just, you know, superhuman. Tony Williams, you know, was another who just took it to a different place. You know, everybody just went, oh my God, this kid, you know, is incredible. And so musical too, you know, wasn't just about technique. Like when you think of technique, you think, you know, Buddy Rich or something like that. And Buddy Rich's music sort of, you know, set the road ahead for him, and he was able to do his thing within that genre of music. I guess it's the same with Tony, with Miles Davis. You know, I think they raised the bar to the point of like modern, you know, classical chamber music, but within a improvised jazz setting. Some of the things on Feed to Kilimanjaro, some of these records are just so deep and musical. And Elvin Jones, of course, you know, what the heck was he doing? Nobody knows. It was just, you know, out of the blue, somebody started to play like that. Elvin started to play like that, and everybody followed him. So these kinds of guys, you know, Eric Gravatt is another one of my favorites. And he played with, who was the second drummer, I think, in Weather Report. It isn't like I'm just, you know, some gifted idiot, you know. I'm not. I just, you know, took what these guys did, and some of it was just so impossible, like Billy Cobham. I remember the first time I saw him, I thought, if I practice 10 hours a day for the rest of my life, I'm never going to be what that guy is, you know. And, you know, that's how you learn, is by seeing other people and going, wow, you know, can I encompass this into what I'm doing? And when you get to the place where you can't, you start thinking, how can I just be completely different than this guy and still make a living and you know, do something meaningful, but not do that, because it's impossible. What, you know, I couldn't go that far as Billy. So
big message we have on Drum Channel: just be yourself. You know,
yeah.
You're not going to play like somebody else, but they're not going to play like you either.
Yeah, and don't use that as an excuse for not being good. You know, you got to learn to keep time. You have to have something going on that will be attractive to other musicians and to, you know, the evolution of drumming, or, you know, whatever it is. You know, do it well. Don't use that as an excuse, because everybody says you have to play musically, right? So okay, we know that, and there's different ways of playing musically, but the concept of musical means to deal with the elements of music. So we have rhythm, melody, harmony, dynamics, and orchestration. So, you know, the orchestration for jazz is very, you know, cut and dry. You're playing a ride cymbal beat. You're using your other limbs to accent, you know. Tony played many, you know, 8 beats or 4 beats on the hi-hat. These types of things were orchestrational and, you know, rhythmic and, you know, sort of elements that he was using. If you listen to something on, say, like Toot Sweet or Mademoiselle Mabry, I think, on Feed to Kilimanjaro, this Miles Davis 60s album, you'll hear so much more, because there was not this kind of, what's the word, you know, restraint. And Tony was able to use the drum set more orchestrationally and more melodically, and, you know, not play constantly. So, you know, there's where it kind of started, and you can take it farther. that band, the Bad Plus, you know, they have wonderful things, and it's just a small set that the guy's playing, but he uses it very musically.
Let's come back and talk a little bit more about your Art of Drumming course. But let's take a look at first Terry behind his big kit and see a little bit of what we're talking about. That's what we call the big kit, I think, right? Then we have what we call the jazz kit, and then we have what we call the club kit, I guess it would be.
Well, yeah, you know, my big kit, I can have a trailer and there's enough support for me to be able to tour with that. And I actually need that, you know, to play the way I play.
And explain why.
Well, because when you're playing melodically, you need notes. And, you know, so to have more notes gives me more options melodically. I can do longer runs. The notes on that kit are tuned to specific pitches. So now that I know them, it's pretty much diatonic on the right side and chromatic on the left. So I can mix and match and harmonize, and I have many bass drums, each tuned to a different pitch. And then there's many colors, you know, of instruments on there. I have the bells and gongs and, you know, so for orchestrational purposes, if you're hearing me play on the toms maybe the whole night, that might be boring. So for contrast, I can play melodically on the cymbals. So each group of cymbals, like dry sounds, you know, double chinas, open chinas, and bells, I have a set of 8. So I can play 8-note melodies, you know. Within those 8 notes, I can make up variations and what have you in all 3 or 4 of those different orchestrational choices.
And how are the piccolo toms tuned?
They're tuned chromatically, so that's the black and the white notes on the piano, whereas the right side of the kit, it's with the lower drums, is just diatonic, which is like the white notes on the piano only.
Back when we started Drum Channel, which was about 15 years ago, we have an anniversary coming up really soon, and you moved out here from Austin, Texas, just to be here and do it with it, and you were named by Neil Peart as our artist in residence. I got many, you know, when many people wanted to come out and play with Terry, but it was always like they're a little intimidated because he's going to be on his big kit, and what am I going to do? And every time they got here, it was the completely opposite, because you're not playing with a drummer with a whole bunch of drums, you're playing with an orchestra, basically.
I try to take that approach, yeah. You know, especially if you're solo drumming, but all these techniques, you know, can be used with others, should be used with others to play musically, you know. And improvisation is, you know, you can play or not play. You can, you know, you can play fast or slow. You can contrast or you know, go along with what the other artist is doing. So many choices. And by studying, you know, classical music and reading little dictionaries of music terms, I just identified so many concepts. Once you identify a concept, there's an infinite amount of ways you can apply that concept. So that's where it started, you know, just like how can we, you know, now when people come out, I try and play on the African kit, the Barney kit, we call it. And because those are sounds that the other drummer doesn't have. If somebody comes out and wants to play a traditional kit, then I can play something totally different, but accompany this guy.
When you go through that again, because I know it's a hugely important part of your messaging, when you're playing with somebody, aside from being two drummers, when you're playing in a band, there's three ways you would approach it. Contrast.
Well, I can't think of them all on the top of my head, but there's a section in the Art of Drumming class that deals with, I call it Improv 101. And it's like all the choices you could make, you know. If somebody's playing fast, I could go with them, or I could go against them and play something slow, you know, that lets them be the fast, exciting part. You know, there's high pitch and low pitch. So if somebody's playing, you know, maybe on their cymbals, I can use maybe lower drums to contrast with that, or I could play on bells and things like that to create that, you know, dual high frequency, you know, event.
By fast and slow, you mean less notes than he plays as opposed to not faster and slower.
Yes, if he's doing like a 30-second note solo, you know, I might play like quarter notes and half notes to emphasize how fast he's playing, you know.
The great line that Abe Laboriel Sr., Abe Laboriel Jr.'s father, said here at Drum Channel once was, I said, what would you have to say to young musicians out there? And he said, we're professional listeners.
That's rule number one of Improv 101, is to listen. And then play with, play against, you know. I have all these things written down, and had I been a little bit more prepared, I could have, you know, spouted them off. But
well, that's part of what we're going to be refilming again, because we're going to be updating a lot of the lessons that you had and have a complete course up, which is the Complete Art of Drumming, which has the components of
rhythm, melody, dynamics, harmony, and orchestration.
Right.
Those are the basic elements of all music. You know, when I talk about the scope of music as an art form and the art and science of music, that comes later, but it should definitely come. And when I say classical music, you know, I don't mean necessarily Bach or Brahms or, you know, this kind of thing. I mean more like 20th century music, you know, Stravinsky and Varese and some of these guys really opened up things. I love Debussy and Ravel as well, Bartok, you know. There's a lot of great music, and there's aspects of this that infiltrated into rock with, say, Emerson, Lake and Palmer and these, you know, prog bands and stuff like that, where the level of their scope was way more broad than Chuck Berry, you know what I mean? So then you know, in jazz, for sure, Miles Davis is one of my, and Weather Report are my two biggest influences there. And they had the arrangements of Gil Evans, you know, and you know, all of this classical influence from the 20th century was brought into the art of improvisation. You know, you had bebop, which is an incredible innovation, but it was sort of boxed into playing over changes and, you know, the speeds and things like that. Post-bop, you know, you had Max Roach, you know, exploring odd times and playing more melodically with the drum also waltzes. And there was a piece he did in 7, I can't remember, but it was the same type of thing, where he used ostinatos. Now that was back, in the 60s. So.
Yeah.
And then it just went from there to say, Weather Report and Miles Davis doing the types of things they did in the 70s, which was pretty much all-encompassing in terms of music, and going where no one else has gone, like I think Miles in the 70s really left all kind of white, how can I say this? All of his influences there were more abstract and more African, just really took it out there where, in the same way James Brown did, Miles did in jazz, and it just went left. And there were no influences that were typical, he just constantly changed and moved forward. And I've always been attracted to guys like that, like whatever, Picasso paints and everybody wants to paint like Picasso, somebody designs a building, Le Corbusier or somebody like that, and that's how buildings are made. When Miles played the trumpet and set himself up with all these different backgrounds to his trumpet playing, that's the day music changed. So those kind of innovators are my whatever it's called, my reason for existence. I live to hear something like that makes the big question mark go up above my head, and I would like to do that with my playing too.
Speaking about artists who you just mentioned who are artists, you're an artist. What about your paintings and your...
Well, that's what I did a lot of in Japan. I didn't really practice that much in Japan over the last 2 years. I did compose a lot, and I think I've composed in the last year or 2 or 3, maybe 4 records or so. So I have my latest one is called Individuation, and that's got classical as well as jazz-ish stuff with some pretty heavy percussion. I have all my percussion instruments sampled, so I was able to do a lot of variation with the rhythm and the percussion and orchestrations and all. Then before that, this record that I did is called Reality, Terry Bozzio's Reality, and there was my friend Gary Epstein, who was the live sound engineer for Missing Persons. Back when I was living in LA, before I went to Austin, Texas, around the corner from my house was Jeff Bruton, who was Jim Bruton, the guitarist with Elvis's son. And he had a 16-track 2-inch machine like I did, so I recorded drum tracks just with a beatbox and dead air, just improvised sections and beats, and I think composed, beats. I didn't want to do something generic, so I'd set up a beatbox thing, and then I would go, oh, this would be a cool beat, and I'd make up some linear harmonic thing. But what I did was make sections, there'd be breakdowns and solo sections and, different parts. So, and I always thought, okay, I'll overdub on top of that. And I started to do that in '91. and I just finished it, a year or 2 ago. So that's called Reality. And that's like my old Remo drums, and how I played right before I got into the ostinato thing heavily. So it's kind of like... the
transition of Terry into...
Yeah, like, I don't know, before Polytown, after Jeff Beck, kind of in that range. So I remember trying my Swiss triplet ostinato, and I didn't quite have it together enough to record it, it was just still too loose. But at any rate, it took me 28 years or so to overdub the final stuff because, I've done so much work in composition, and it started with the drums in a way because, I had these ostinatos and I wanted to make structures and forms, and that was all really composing something, not just playing what you already know, kind of working through developing something you don't know how to play yet and seeing where that takes you.
And as far as practicing goes, I can tell you firsthand, because for several years my office was next door to where Terry was with his drum set. He would work on these challenges and work on the same pattern for days at a time. I'm talking about the same 4 or 8 bars until you tried to have that become comfortable, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if it doesn't flow naturally, it's not ready to be played. So if you're still thinking about it, wait a minute.
And where can people get all this information?
It's all on terrybozzio.com. Thanks to Danny Serafin's nephew, who is a computer programmer, I finally got most of my stuff available as a digital download. And it all comes with the liner notes and the artwork and cover art and, all those credits and stuff are on a PDF included in the package. So you can download it, you can look at the picture. Like Frank always used to say, an album cover is like the music comes from here, So those images, I put down for, for my projects. And I do a lot of artwork ever since, I guess it was 1975 when I got with Zappa. The first tour was with Captain Beefheart, whose actual name is Don Van Vliet, and he is a really deep artist. So he was always carrying around sketchbooks and markers and stuff, and I got into it, and he encouraged me, and that's where it began. So, now I've gone through a big abstract period, but I've been getting more into caricatures and almost like cartoon-like and a little bit more realistic people, like drawing a thing as opposed to not drawing a thing, like the abstract stuff is like making something that doesn't exist in nature, so it's like, wow, what is that? What does it mean? Stuff like that. And it could mean anything to any number of people. But the latest things are, it started with my friend Gary Gutman, who was the original keyboard player in Missing Persons. And he was, he's also a musician and an artist. And he's composes for TV and film and that kind of stuff. And then his art is a little bit like, Zappa liked it. He showed him, it one night when we were in Missing Persons or whatever, and Frank said, yeah, that's cool. And he started to say, well, why don't you try, something more like a face or this or that? And I said, oh, no, I can't draw real things, I just go and, add some color or whatever, and there it is. And so I think one of the first things I did was a picture of Orson Welles, and it's pretty damn good. You can tell it's Orson Welles, so that's a big success right there. And then it just became more like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and I can start with a squiggle, make it into a nose, or make it into a part of the hair. And I've just done so much art now, especially.
And that's available on your website also.
Yes, yeah, a little bit.
You talked about those years with Zappa. There's another side of Terry, which I didn't know about for years either. There's Terry the vocalist, right?
Oh, God, yeah.
Come on, fess up to it. You sang on a lot of those.
I sang on a lot of crazy tunes, yeah. Zappa, we were playing this groove as he was writing this song called Wind Up Working in a Gas Station. And the groove was in 5, and he asked me to sing a background on the chorus, which is wind up working in a gas station. So that's five beats, right? And I'm like, God, I'm playing in 5, and I didn't know I could sing on top of that, and I did. And it was just like from listening to jazz, you're listening so hard and playing at the same time that just seemed to come naturally. So, the beats I was playing were way more generic, so it was a little bit easier. But yeah, I put on the devil's mask and had a lot of fun working with Zappa.
We have a great Zappa roundtable on Drum Channel that you guys should really check out. It's a couple hours with with you and Chester,
Yeah.
Ruth Underwood,
Yeah, and Chad,
Chad Wackerman for sure, and
Ralph Humphreys.
And Ralph Humphreys, yeah. A lot of great stories, funny, very funny educational stories
Yeah.
about all of you back in the day
Yeah.
who went through that school, I guess I would almost call it.
It is a school, and it was wonderful. Yeah, I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world, you know, to have gotten to play with him.
Terry is also available if you're so inclined, and I certainly would be if I was a young drummer or an old drummer out there, to give you some lessons. He does some private lessons too. You can contact us here. Email me if you want at donlombardi@drumchannel.com. donlombardi@drumchannel.com. I can tell you the website to go to instantly set up and find out what times Terry has available. 1997, I believe, you won the Hall of Fame for Modern Drummer, and I remember that story.
Yeah.
Because they called me the 1996 5-4-3-2-1. They were tired of him winning every single year the best clinician category. So they said, nobody else is going to have another chance. We have to make a category in our Hall of Fame for clinicians and put you into that so we can get you out of the running. So
Is that how that happened?
that's how that happened, yes,
wow,
right.
I never knew, but that's the sick part about these kind of, what are they called? Readers' polls and who's the best this or who's the most crazy drummer, or depending on the magazines, and their readers, it's just like it could be anything, it's like throwing stuff against the wall. But I went in Modern Drummer from best up and coming drummer when I got with Missing Persons, right? They ignored my jazz history, playing with Woody Shaw.
You were missing during those years, right?
I was a pretty hip cat in San Francisco playing with jazz guys. Then the Zappa thing, then UK, and then Missing Persons comes out, and it's so pop and commercial that they called me the best up and coming drummer. So I went from that to a few years later, after getting into clinics, as the clinician guy, and then from that into the Hall of Fame. So it was like, what the hell sense does that make?
Well, one of many awards you certainly deserve.
I've been very lucky with that, and grateful, because just like any human being, I need to make a living, and I really want to be able to share what it is I do. It's like lately, I look at my art and I love my art. I can live with my art, and I can look at it and go, well, this isn't, is good or blah, 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 but I like to see it, and I like to share it with others. And same thing with my music, with teaching, with drumming, with, the classical music I write and these latest few records. I listen to that stuff. It's a part of me, and I enjoy just listening to myself, which is a great place to be, I still listen to Stravinsky and Varese and Ravel and Debussy, all these other famous classical masters that I love and have influenced me. But in Japan, when I'm walking around town, it's kind of you're on your feet a lot there, so it's wear some earplugs for the noise of the scooters and the cars and all, and I just walk around and get into a zone listening to my music, and it's nice to be in that space. Whereas, I think most of us, most of our lives, we're like critical of ourselves and, self-loathing a little bit, and, oh, I wish I was better, and of course not willing to do any of the work to get better. So, if I can chip away at composing and feel good about it, that's a real plus psychologically. So.
Giving back is a big part of our mission here on Drum Channel too.
Yeah. Oh, and I know you're a saint.
Well, working with you and all these great drummers, and you and I working together.
Yeah.
And we have some really fun things coming up for you in the future, by the way.
Yeah.
Some surprises. So it's going to be a great year and a great another 15 years for us. What am I saying?
Let's hope.
There we will go. Terry, I thank you so much
for
getting back here, which is something we've been talking about for months and months as you went through all the trials and tribulations of when you could safely fly back.
Well, you know, I always say I'm here physically, but I think my mind is somewhere still over the Pacific Ocean, working its way back day by day, you know.
Turning your time around is a difficult thing, I know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Terry, for
Thank you,
joining us.
Don.
Yes, and we're going to see Terry real soon here with some more things on Drum Channel, some surprises. He is also the host with the most, because he's going to be hosting and interviewing some great artists coming up. And we thank you for watching us today. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tons of really cool stuff there. There's Lombardi Lives on there. There's a series of them, and then you can see all of them when you come on to drumchannel.com, where you will learn how to play the drums. Right, Terry?
Yep.
You can learn if you've never played before. If you're an amateur drummer, you're going to get a little bit better. And if you want to be a pro, we've got everything you need. You know, you don't need a drum lesson every day, 5 times a day, in order to learn how to play drums. You just need somebody giving you the right lessons. And if you practice hard, within a year, you're going to be really good.
Amen.
Yes.
And even more, you will be more than a drummer.
Yes, exactly right. We're going to get you into that next level. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.